Well, this last year I traveled to many countries, mostly in Asia, but also to Australia and Germany, Israel and Canada. The purpose of my trip was to do research on Buddhist ethics and society on a Fulbright grant. So I was in Nepal and Bangladesh for 6 months and also did research in Indonesia for 2 months. So here I'm trying to get in touch with Buddhist women in various different cultures, listen to their voices, try to understand more about their lives, where they're coming from, what their aspirations are, how we can help them achieve their aims. And it was a marvelous learning experience. In about 13 different countries in Asia that I visited, I noticed that there's tremendous interest in Buddhism everywhere. And Buddhist women are coming into their own. They're taking roles, more active roles in society as teachers, as leaders, and so forth. At the same time, Buddhist cultures are also declining in certain ways, in that, I should say, they are challenged by material values, secular values, and also by evangelical sort of efforts by other religious traditions. So from my evaluation, the important thing is that Buddhists become more educated. If Buddhists are educated and know why their families were Buddhist, to understand the benefits of the Buddhist teachings, then they'll be in a better position to explain their religious values and traditions to others, especially to their children, to the community, and so forth. So if Buddhists are not educated, if they don't really understand their own religious background, then when they are challenged, they really don't know what to say. Now here's where I think Buddhist women can be very helpful, because they are in a position, if they had the opportunity to study Buddhism in more depth, they're in a position to help bring Buddhist teachings into the family, into the community, into the society in general, in some very positive ways. In locations I visited, I noticed that many Buddhist women are still poor, still undereducated. In some cases, they are still illiterate. They face tremendous problems: water, poverty, a lack of educational opportunities, especially Buddhist educational opportunities and higher educational opportunities. So these are things that I think Sakyadhita really needs to address. And we can work together with them to understand better what their needs are and how we can help them address those needs. Sex trafficking is still a huge problem in South and Southeast Asia, for example, and most Buddhist women in other parts of the world aren't aware of that. In many countries such as Bangladesh, Nepal, Tibet, and so forth, there's still problems getting clean water. This creates many different health problems. Buddhist women still don't have enough education about health, women's health in particular, women and children's health. So this is another area where we could be very, very helpful. For example, up in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, there is a Buddhist minority, the Chakma people, the Marma people, Rakhine people, who are living in very basic, very difficult economic conditions. As a minority in the remote areas, they are also under siege from settlers coming in from outside. So their very livelihood is already at a subsistence level, but their agricultural production, their water rights are under threat from outsiders. And because they are marginalized people, they really have no one looking out for them. In fact, while I was there, there was an incident where some illegal Bengali settlers came into an area of where the indigenous people live in order to settle and to basically steal the indigenous people's lands. And the people were dumbfounded. They asked, what's happening here? And the army had come in to protect not the indigenous people, but the illegal settlers. So when they began to question this, the settlers got irate, and the army just started to fire point blank at the indigenous people, and 6 people were killed, including a woman. But you hear nothing about it in the press. Even when you try to look for information, it's as if it never happened. We started a letter writing campaign, but basically there's no one to help protect these people. In another example, I traveled into eastern Tibet, and I found a community with 8,000 nuns living with no clean water supply. They have only the river, which has villages upstream, so the drinking water is basically the runoff from other people's laundry and so forth, which is totally unhealthy. And they have no health care, and they have very meager diet. They eat mostly potatoes and a little bit of barley flour. Now they're very happy because their intention is to practice the Dharma, but if they get sick, if they get debilitated from malnutrition, they can't really practice very well. So there's some very basic needs that need to be addressed right here that people need to be more aware of. Another concern that we often overlook is basic security issues. In areas like the Himalayas and also in Bangladesh, many women live under threat because often indigenous people have no protection from illegal settlers or even from government agencies, even from the army. And there are conflicts that rage as we speak. Now, this year and last year when I traveled in the Himalayas, the situation in Kashmir was much improved. I didn't run into any conflict zones, but often when I travel in this area, we have to stop the jeep and ask at the checkposts whether there's firing ahead. And if there is, then we have to adjust our schedule so that we travel in the daytime. But there are tremendous security risks that women live with on a day-to-day basis. And it's not only that they care only for themselves, they care about their children. If their children are going to go to school, they have to be in a safe environment. And this affects girl children in particular, because when schools are limited in number, then boys can walk to a school in another village or another town. But girls are at risk. If they were to walk to another village or to the nearest town, they might get raped on the way. There's too much risk involved, and the parents are not willing to send the girls. So this is why we need more and more schools, especially for girl children. Boys have many opportunities. They can also get education at village temples, but girls don't have those opportunities. So this is something I became very much aware of, that we mostly would not be aware of, because we take a lot of things for granted. We take water for granted. We take adequate food for granted. We take health care for granted, and we take basic security for granted. These are luxuries that millions of women throughout the world do not enjoy.